Thanksgiving is the third most popular holiday amongst Americans after Christmas and Easter. But why is it so popular? Is it the parade? Is it the excessive amounts of delicious food? I'm here to talk about that, along with the origins of Thanksgiving, who else celebrates it, and more, while I do my makeup. So the first question I have is, what was the first Thanksgiving like, and what did early Americans think about it? So the first Thanksgiving is often described as a harvest feast that took place in 1621, and it's usually described as a cooperation between the first European settlers and the Native Americans. Now, Thanksgiving didn't actually become a national holiday until the Civil War in 1863, and it was supposedly established by Abraham Lincoln to reinforce peace between the North and the South and with the tribal nations. Now, the reason for wanting to enforce good relations with the tribal nations include that Abraham Lincoln actually ordered the hanging of 38 Dakota people, and he even starved the Dakota people and forcibly displaced them a year prior to establishing Thanksgiving as a national holiday. And this actually resulted in the Dakota War of 1862. And like I said, a year later, Lincoln established Thanksgiving as a holiday, but he definitely didn't invent this idea of feasting with the natives. The origins of feasting with the natives date way back to when the first Spanish settlers came to what we now know as Florida in 1565. And there's also evidence that European settlers feasted with the natives in modern-day Virginia in 1619. Now, in return, these colonizers brought the native people disease, war, and ultimately the displacement from their homes. Now, what did the Native Americans and early European settlers think of Thanksgiving? Well, understandably, the Native Americans look at Thanksgiving today as a day of mourning, and they've officially been doing so since the 1970s, though some do still try to find some positivity in the holiday. And apparently, English European settlers have a tradition of giving thanks and hosting Thanksgiving days when they want to say a prayer or thank the Almighty for providing harvest or for rain, for example. And they also did this when they had a period of bountiful harvest after scarcity and sickness in 1621. Now, those were the first European settlers, but how did different U.S. presidents celebrate Thanksgiving? Now, I've said this before, that it was Abraham Lincoln who officially declared Thanksgiving as a national holiday, but other U.S. presidents also celebrated Thanksgiving, but it wasn't in November, and it wasn't always on the same day, and it wasn't for the reasons we recognize the holiday today. For example, George Washington issued a Thanksgiving proclamation declaring a day of thanks and prayer for the ability to establish a government peacefully. And the next year in February, he declared another Thanksgiving proclamation. Now, President John Adams also celebrated Thanksgiving in April and May, and Thomas Jefferson chose to not even declare a Thanksgiving because he recognized that under the First Amendment, he wasn't obligated to enforce or mandate a day of prayer. Abraham Lincoln, again, also declared Thanksgiving as a national holiday, but he didn't exactly choose a day when it would be celebrated. At the time, Congress passed legislation allowing for Thanksgiving to be a national holiday, but they gave presidents the ability to choose when they wanted to celebrate it. It was actually FDR who declared that Thanksgiving would be on the fourth Thursday of November, after Americans were split on when they wanted to celebrate the holiday under his rule, when he was enforcing it on different Thursdays in November during his term. Finally, the House and the Senate decided to put an end to all of this confusion, and they declared the holiday an official day once and for all. So why do Americans today enjoy Thanksgiving, and what parts of Thanksgiving do they enjoy the most? According to a poll conducted by Pew Research, around 91% of Americans say that they will celebrate Thanksgiving this year. Now, that includes 88% of Americans and immigrants who have been in this country for over 20 years. Now, one of the reasons why Americans love this holiday so much is the opportunity it presents for family gatherings and social connection. And aside from spending this holiday with family, the rising popularity of Friendsgiving also highlights the appeal that the social connection this holiday pushes for. Another reason why Americans love Thanksgiving is the comfort that they find in the tradition of Thanksgiving, usually because they expect the same foods to be served every year. Americans also tend to find comfort in the theme of gratitude and reflection that this holiday pushes for, which is something that most Americans tend to enjoy and find peace and comfort in. Now, Americans are also seeming to really appreciate the nuanced understanding and acknowledgement of this holiday's history, as it leads to a growing awareness of what Native Americans gone through in America. And it's also right before the holidays and right before Black Friday, where people get things on sale. And finally, Americans seem to appreciate when non-Americans come to America and celebrate this holiday with them, making it a little bit more significant and special for the Americans who normally celebrate it. So we know Americans love Thanksgiving, but what about people in other countries? Now, I was kind of not surprised to hear that Canada celebrates Thanksgiving as well, because I find them very similar to the United States. It's just like the French version. But I was surprised to find out that in Brazil, they also celebrate Thanksgiving, and they call it Dia de Ação de Graças. And it actually started when the Brazilian ambassador to the United States saw people celebrating Thanksgiving in America, that he brought it back to the president at the time and said that Brazil needs to do this. And so they started picking up the traditions of Thanksgiving, except unlike America, they don't really have parades. They have a parade, but then they have like a carnival without the cartoon characters, and then they have a day at church or service where they give thanks. Now, in Germany, Switzerland, and Austria, they also have something similar to Thanksgiving, but the only thing that is really in common with the Thanksgiving tradition is the theme of giving thanks for bountiful harvest. And their version of Thanksgiving is known as the Rural Festival of Thanks, and it's usually held in late September. Now, in the Netherlands, some residents actually celebrate an American Thanksgiving because apparently the Pilgrims made a pit stop in Leiden, which is a city in the Netherlands, and instead of a meal, the residents just go to a church to give thanks for bountiful harvest and for the good fortune of the American settlers. Now, in Japan, they also celebrate something that they call a Labor Thanksgiving Day, but instead of having large feasts and parade, they basically host a festival to honor the workers in their communities, kind of more so of like a Labor Day than a Thanksgiving. And they celebrate this day on November 23rd. And then we have Liberia, which is the only other country to officially celebrate Thanksgiving, the American holiday. And their celebration marks when freed American slaves established Liberia in 1822. And this holiday takes place on the first Thursday of every November. Now, Liberians celebrate this holiday in their own ways individually, but most people will either use the holiday to feast with family, or they'll use it as a day of relaxation, or they will go to church. Now, if you've made it to the end of this video, please let me know by commenting your favorite Thanksgiving food and your favorite part about Thanksgiving. And thank you so much for watching, and I will see you on the next one. Please don't forget to comment, like, and subscribe. And if you want to read more about this, as always, all sources in the comments.